Hello, beautiful consumers, beloved consumers. Thank you for joining me for Cam Church. My name is Unicron. It is my honor to have your attention. Today's sermon topic is going to be on the idea of using relationships to heal. And I've done a lot of work in my own life about around relationships, and I've had the privilege of preaching on these topics many times. But in this case, I do believe that I have expanded my viewpoint to other experiences. My experience of being an anxious avoidant person and learning what I've learned in relationships, I think is very useful to other people with anxious avoidance in relationships. But I have been studying relationships for a couple of years now very deeply, and with the goal of learning about myself through them and also finding peace and harmony in myself. And I am so happy to share the knowledge that I have with you about this. I do think no matter who you are, no matter how you relate to relationships, you're going to find a deeper understanding of yourself and also of others through this sermon. So please do stick around and pay attention, because we all deserve to heal and have peace in our relationships. So there's a couple different types. Attachment theory is just one way to look at relationships. We can think of it in these ways. If you have a lot of conflict in relationships, this sermon will help you. If you find yourself that you prefer to be alone, that's another way that you can heal, and we're going to cover all of these things. Or if you find yourself in relationships that aren't too deep, you're not finding soulmates necessarily, you're getting along with people, you're having these relationships that you feel like could go deeper, but they're not going deeper, and maybe you like it that way, or you're afraid of it being any other way, or you just aren't familiar with that. This sermon can help you there. And also, if you find that you prefer to be alone, or you prefer to focus on friendships, or if you find you focus too much on romance, I think no matter who you are, no matter how you relate to relationships, you're going to find benefit in this sermon. If you're someone who is having a lot of obsession over relationships, and you seek out relationships, and you worry about your partner giving you enough attention, that's what's called anxious preoccupied attachment style. And attachment styles are the words I feel like are like difficult to remember sometimes if you're not like deeply studying it. But the main thing to understand is that when we're babies, when we're infants, how our parents show up for us is how we end up internalizing the world, and that's how we end up feeling if life is safe or not, if relationships are safe or not. And it creates a pattern of cycle of how we show up in relationships. So that's the idea of attachment theory. How we attach to our caregivers, how our caregivers model safe or unhealthy attachment to us, actually determines how we show up in relationships later on, unless we do the work to dismantle or to create new systems. So anxious preoccupied is the idea that you're kind of fixated on a partner. A lot of women oftentimes end up in this state, but men can have this happen too, where they're constantly thinking about their partner. They constantly need to be in contact with them. And then if you've got two people who are anxious preoccupied, and they're so dependent on each other in order to breathe and eat and think and go anywhere and do anything, that's called codependency. So you might have heard some of these words. Codependency is this idea that you're overly reliant on each other, and you can't do anything otherwise. But oftentimes an anxious person will get into a relationship with someone who is not anxious, either someone with a secure attachment, hopefully, or someone with an anxious avoidant or dismissive avoidant. There's a couple different types, but anxious avoidant is someone who's worried about it a lot. Dismissive avoidant is someone who acts like they don't care, or seems like they don't care, or they even think they don't care, and they take a step back from relationships, and they don't value relationships very highly. It doesn't mean they don't date necessarily, just that they think that everyone else is dramatic and they're not emotionally invested in relationships. And we will talk more about this, because no matter who you are or how you're coming at relationships, you have to understand that unless you're experiencing a deep sense of fulfillment and peace in your relationships, you have a place to heal. You have work to do. Your relationships can help you navigate the space of your unsettledness, and they can help you find a place of peace and harmony, not just in relationships, but in your entire life. And this is because relationships act as a mirror for us, and all of the triggers that happen outside of ourselves, that end up all the things that happen outside of ourselves that end up triggering us emotionally, give us the opportunity to learn more about ourselves. And when we have a good understanding of how we see the world, and we recognize the Unicult principle that belief makes real and that we are creating our own reality, we actually understand that we aren't victims, and that these triggers that are happening to us are actually opportunities to dive deep and actually to transform our beliefs and transform our lives. And transforming your belief and transforming your understanding of who you are and how deeply you understand yourself is actually what's going to radiate out and transform your physical reality, because it's a micro-macrocosm situation. So as above, so below, everything that's inside of you is reflected outward. I really want to say that you cannot have peace in your relationships until you have peace within yourself. And this has been my absolute experience. This has been, something that I have believed and focused on, and I preach it. And the reason why I preach it so strongly and so commonly is because I did this in my life. I had very toxic, very tumultuous, very violent relationships up until I was able to integrate peace into my soul, into my body. And ever since I've been able to learn how to regulate my nervous system, my relationships have gotten so much more peaceful. You might say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean you're not in a relationship with the people you were in relationship with before? Does it mean those people transformed and they're no longer violent or cruel to you? The answer is both. And some of the relationships that I had that I was very addicted to, these toxic relationships, the quality and the reality of those relationships, if they were true and deep and loving relationships, they transformed radically. The role that person plays in my life now is different than the role they played in the past, but the relationship itself is now peaceful and harmonious and beautiful. And so that can transform. For the relationships that I had that were superficial and that were toxic and where there wasn't that deep connection, no, I'm no longer in relationship with those people because there was nothing of substance there. I'm able to have true, authentic connections with everyone who I have a true, authentic connection with at a peaceful and harmonious way without getting dysregulated. And that's because I learned these tools through relationships. I don't want to undervalue the act of being alone. One of the things that is really important with regulating your nervous system is that if you are in a relationship with someone who continuously dysregulates your nervous system, who puts you into fight or flight mode, who is toxic, who you're getting into fights with, emotional, verbal, physical, whatever, if you're having conflict after conflict, you find yourself crying and shaking and being upset very regularly, then you need to understand that you need to have boundaries with that person, because you are not able to practice emotionally regulating yourself in the presence of that person. And if you take all this information on and they're also right here with you and they're like, you know what, I want to create a safe place for you to emotionally regulate, then you can work together and you can create that safe place. But more often than not, one person is going on this healing journey and the other person is not totally aware, and they're more addicted to the toxic cycles than you want to be. And so oftentimes that is when you need to have boundaries. And we'll talk more about that. So if you're in a relationship and you're struggling because you feel like they are not meeting your needs, this is very, very, very common. You ask for something, maybe an accommodation in your relationship, or you ask for certain, you want to go on a date, you want to have this or that, you want to have a party at your house, you want to do that, you want them to come with you on a vacation, whatever it is, okay? And they aren't able to do that. That can cause a lot of conflict in relationships. And it can make you feel a lot of feelings. So let's start with the feelings. What feelings does it make you feel when someone lets you down in your expectations and in your requests in a relationship? When your partner isn't giving you what you want or what you need, sit with your feelings and really identify deep down, what is the deeper feeling? I wanted to go to the mall this weekend with my partner, and they don't want to go. I feel upset. I feel triggered. Okay, well, going to the mall is not really a big deal, right? All things said and done. Are you really going to be crying and feeling upset about the mall? No, there's something deeper happening in this case. So if your partner says they don't want to go with you to the mall, and you are really having a hopeful expectation for that, look deeper at the feeling and ask yourself, why am I so disappointed? What did you really want? You feel like you're afraid to go alone. You feel like you're hindered without the support, maybe. You feel like you can't emotionally regulate yourself enough to go to the mall. Or you feel like they are preferring to spend time away from you, which makes you feel insecure. Or you are feeling like they don't like to spend time with you, or you're feeling like they don't have the same values as you and you're deeply incompatible. Learn what it is, this deeper trigger, and ask yourself, where is this trigger stemming from? Where did this come from? Is this from my child? Like, where in my childhood did my parents make me feel like I was unsafe to go do things alone, or like I wasn't supported, or like they didn't want to be around me, or whatever it is that you're feeling from your partner? And the more responsibility you can take at this point, the better it's going to be for integrating this healing energy within your relationship. So every trigger is a blessing. Every trigger is a blessing. And what I mean by that is that when you get triggered, you're able to take that information about yourself and remember that it's about you, and it's not about you, right? Like, whatever your partner's doing, it's their own trip, and however you're interpreting it is your own trip. And so the more you can differentiate between that and recognize that your partner's behavior is never an indication of your self-worth or their lack of self-worth, the deeper you are going to be able to heal. The more responsibility you can take without feeling like a victim, without feeling like people are doing things to you, the easier you are going to be able to regulate your nervous system, and the easier you are going to be able to heal and find that sense of peace within yourself and find that sense of peace in your relationships. So explore the deeper meaning and pain of your ask that you asked your partner. Then check your communication. Did you communicate how important this thing was? Did you communicate? Can you now that you have a deeper understanding, can you now communicate why it's important? Can you find a solution that says, I wanted you to come with me to the mall because I'm having anxiety about going to the mall and I need to go to the mall. Is there another way that you can support me? Maybe I can call you when I get to the mall just until I get accustomed to the environment. Can we go to the mall another time? Figure out a way to solve that actual root problem rather than focusing on that surface level. Because if you just focus on the surface level of the mall, you're going to go around and around. And most couples do this. They just go around and around on these surface level topics, and they never get deeper into the actual pain or the actual trigger or the actual feeling that you're trying to solve by asking your partner to do that. So try to communicate better on your end why you need this, what it represents to you, and try to work with your partner to find a solution to meeting your need that you're feeling, the emotional need rather than the physical need, and figure out if there's a solution. Additionally, you need to validate that the emotional need that you have is valid. This is essential Because you might think, well, why am I so fixated on my partner going to the mall with me, or this other surface level thing? Why am I so fixated on it? As you understand the deeper emotional need, and as you take it back to your childhood, and as you take it back to the feeling of feeling safe in the relationship, of feeling safe in your body, of feeling safe in the world, and of utilizing the relationship to help you regulate your nervous system, you're going to recognize and realize that your frustration and your emotional pain is valid. It's legitimate. And neither you nor your partner should sweep that emotion under the rug. This needs to be brought to the surface and dealt with and recognized. Otherwise, it turns into extra fear, extra pain, extra resentment as time goes on. So validate. This is a legitimate thing that I'm upset about, even if it looks like it's not. Even if the mall itself isn't the real issue. There's something deeper here that I want to work through with you, to your partner, and validate that, because as you validate it, you're not going to be repressing it. And as you pull it up to the surface, you're going to be able to stand up for yourself and your needs in a way that will help you have boundaries if you need them, and it will help you heal. So if your partner is not on the healing journey to the point that they can actually help you uncover these deeper emotions, and they can hold space for you with these deeper feelings, then they're going to be triggered, and they're going to think that you're doing something to them, and then they're going to feel like a victim. And it's a toxic cycle. Oftentimes it can happen where one person fails to meet the needs of the other person, and then that person says, hey, you're not meeting my needs, and then the other person gets triggered and they get upset, and then it's back and forth and back and forth. Okay, that's a toxic relationship. If your partner is not able to hear you and your deeper needs, and they can't hold space for that part of you that is actually in pain, as you attempt to communicate, and they're just being toxic, then you absolutely have to set a boundary. You have to, again, pull your energy away from the situation, because if you are constantly getting dysregulated by this person, then you are not going to be able to find emotional regulation. There's a couple techniques you can do, which if you want to become a master, you can do it, which is to sit in divine harmony with yourself, use the violet flame, and call angels and guides and aliens and God and whoever the spirit of you need into your body, and pray for peace no matter what's happening. And if you do this, you can do what I did, which is stay in a toxic relationship and sit there like a monk and be perfectly at peace and harmony within yourself as you're getting beat or as your house is getting destroyed. I don't recommend this path. I recommend setting boundaries instead. So if you aren't capable of setting those boundaries, like I was, because I was too codependent, I was too dependent on my relationships, I didn't feel like I could break up with this person, you can go down the path of attempting to set that boundary within yourself and cultivating a sense of peace, but I don't recommend it. Hey, one second. Dog situation. There's one more thing I have to say, which I think many of you are not going to like to hear. And I think it's important to say. And if you find yourself thinking, well, I can't leave this person. Maybe you have kids with them. Maybe they are going to be financially destitute without you. Maybe you're going to be financially destitute without them. Maybe if you break up or you leave them, then you'll never see them again. There's a lot of dramatic situations that can potentially happen that keep you in relationships or keep you believing that you absolutely have to stay with a person. And you say, well, I can't leave them. There's nothing I can't. There's nothing I can do. I live with them. I've got kids with them, whatever it is, okay? I want you to know, if you find yourself thinking, I can't leave this person, understand that you absolutely can. Your peace is so important. It's more important than your living situation. It's more important than your financial situation. It's more important than your family situation. Because as you gain that peace and as you gain that clarity and that safety and that understanding and the safe reality around yourself, that's going to be better for everyone. That's going to be better for this person. That's going to be better for your family. That's going to be better for everyone. So it's easy to get trapped in toxic situations and really think, I just can't leave. There's nothing I can do. We have to work this out. I think that's very beautiful, and I think you should try to work it out. But you do not have to stay stuck in toxic relationships. You can absolutely leave them. You can figure it out. You can figure out your financial situation, your living situation. Miracles can happen in your life, and you do not have to stay stuck in toxic situations. I have been there. I have said there's absolutely no way. My first boyfriend, he was so mean to me. And you know what I thought? I thought, we're going to get married. I was 14. I was 15 years old. I said, we're going to get married, and I'm just going to have to wait for him to die. I hope he dies young. That's what I thought. I couldn't even break up with him. And you know why? Because people with abuse and neglect in their childhoods often stay and try to work things out instead of leaving and setting boundaries. So if you had abuse or neglect in your childhood, don't blame yourself for trying to stick around and work things out. That's because you got used to abuse and neglect, and you actually didn't have the opportunity to leave your family dynamic when they were abusing you or neglecting you. And so you got used to that, and you normalized that as love. So if you are feeling stuck in a relationship, you're feeling stuck in a situation, ask yourself, is this coming from childhood? Did I learn that this is okay? Did I learn that this is normal to just constantly endure a toxic situation? If so, okay, I need to break that pattern so that I can leave, so that I can start to build up a sense of internal peace and harmony. And honestly, like I said, a lot of these relationships with people that I had in the past, which were very toxic, it takes two to tango. Okay, I'm absolutely not going to blame any of the men in my life for the toxic relationships that I had with them. I was 100% equally to blame in these cases because I was being toxic as well, and also because I just didn't have the understanding of these patterns and these cycles and how to stop them. And that's usually the case. The people who I was in toxic relationships with, I now have good relationships with. If they were someone of substance, I talk to my high school boyfriend a couple times a year. He's a great dude. He wasn't a great high school boyfriend. He was also 15. He was a 15-year-old boy, okay? And these other people who I've had these really dramatic experiences with, I needed space because I needed to be able to regulate my nervous system, and they needed to be able to regulate theirs, and we weren't capable of regulating each other's nervous system. So we needed a boundary. We needed another type of relationship. So that's how we were able to heal within the relationship, is by recognizing that the relationship wasn't going to help us heal. It was just highlighting these triggers, which is a gift. And then we had to pull back our energy, set our boundaries, and then do the work separately. If you have someone who wants to work through these problems with you, do it. Oftentimes, you're going to either be more advanced than your partner, or your partner's going to be more advanced than you in these cases. And it just depends on the level of trauma that you've had and the amount of, ability that you've had to work through these things, the amount of time that you've spent working on them. People with explosive anger issues can overcome them, but it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of patience and understanding on their end in order to integrate those emotions and learn how to get a handle on them. If you're in a situation like that, you don't need to work these things out with your partner. Really, you can, okay? And it's really beautiful to do that. But you have to understand that when we're talking about healing within relationships, we are talking about using the relationships as a trigger and then doing the healing work on our own, because it is our own peace and harmony that bring us healed relationships. It's really not about you and the other person. It's really about you. So as you get triggered, use those triggers to shine a light on where you're in pain, shine a light on where you're insecure, shine a light on where you're afraid, shine a light on your childhood trauma, and take that information, and you can work it out in your relationship, but I recommend working with your friends, working with a therapist, working with a shadow healer, working with a community, working with addiction recovery programs, whatever it is that you're called to. Use your community to process these triggers. Use resources. outside of your relationship to process these triggers, because it's very difficult to break these patterns, especially these codependent or mutually toxic patterns within the relationship. So yes, use your relationships to heal, but pull your energy away from the relationship when you become dysregulated and focus your energy on activities and people who do help you regulate. I'm going to say it again. When you get dysregulated in your relationship, pull your energy back and refocus your energy on activities and people who actually help you regulate your energy, regulate your emotional system, find your way back to peace, find your way back to safety. One of the best things you can do for yourself is to date someone with secure attachment. Secure attachment is not very common, and if you find someone who is securely attached, you will know because they are available, but they also have boundaries. And it's confusing at first if you've never met someone with secure attachment. You say, you're acting like you love me, but you don't want to run off into the sunset with me and merge our souls together? You're setting a boundary? It can be confusing at first. But if you find someone with secure attachment, hold on to them. Use them to learn. Enter into a relationship with them, if that be friendship or otherwise, and learn how they set boundaries and learn how they regulate their energy and learn how they hold space for you and learn how to hold space for yourself through understanding their ability to hold space for you. If you're curious about that, research secure attachment and see if there's anyone in your life who actually has secure attachment. Having someone in my life who is close to me who has secure attachment has been one of the number one ways in which I have used relationships to heal. Because I never saw secure attachment in my childhood. I never felt it from any of my partners because I wasn't choosing partners with secure attachment. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't. If someone can't help you emotionally regulate, you find yourself consistently dysregulated because of them, you need to pull back your energy and refocus it on people and activities that help you regulate your nervous system. So let's jump to, if you're someone who doesn't get too deep in relationships, you've got these relationships and they're peaceful, but you don't really feel like your partner knows you. Maybe you keep a lot of secrets from them, or you feel like your partner keeps a lot of secrets from you, or you feel like you're getting along, but it's only because you're not showing them your true self. And you're afraid that if they knew your true self, they wouldn't like you or they'd be mad at you. I think a lot of relationships are like this, and I think a lot of relationships were like this in the past. If you're in a relationship like that, ask yourself what you're afraid of. You manifested a relationship in which case you are not seen and you are not heard and you are not respected for who you really are. That's, again, coming from childhood. So your parents probably told you, in order for us to love you, you need to pretend to be someone you're not, and you need to hide who you really are, and we need to live on the surface level. Otherwise, I'm not going to love you or show you care, and you're going to be in trouble. So probably you learned to hold yourself in a place where you feel like it's not, where it wasn't safe to be your true self. Might have even been violent caregivers or neglectful caregivers where you felt like you had to pass. You might be neurodivergent, where you feel like you have to pass to being a certain person, to being a certain way in order for people to understand you and love you and care for you. So ask yourself what you're afraid of, and really dig deep and say, what would it feel like? What would it be like if I had a relationship where I was truly seen? What would it be like if I was in a relationship where I was truly seen and I was respected for who I really am? What would it be like to be in a relationship where I was truly seen and I was truly loved and cherished for all the ways that I really am? And what if I could find a relationship where I actually like who they really are, where I'm not expecting my partner to perform a certain aesthetic or perform a certain ideal in order for me to like them? What would that look like, and what would that feel like, and what's so scary about being with someone on that deeper, authentic level? You oftentimes, if you're one of these people, you actually have a big shadow underneath this seemingly peaceful relationship that's just surface level. And this big shadow can be very, very scary, because what this shadow is the fear and the dysregulation that is just under the surface. So if someone did see you, would you get dysregulated? If you saw someone else's true self, would you get dysregulated? The distance that you're putting up, the walls and the boundaries that you're keeping, these really strong walls and boundaries from people seeing who you really are, seeing your true emotions, that is keeping you from feeling strong emotions. Okay, so you have to understand those strong emotions are there. They're just not being triggered. So you haven't necessarily accomplished healing. You've simply accomplished avoiding healing. And in this case, a lot of diseases can come up, a lot of illnesses, sometimes depression, sometimes physical illnesses, a lot of times anxiety. So the way to heal this is to find someone that it is safe to be vulnerable with. Be your true self online. Figure out how to express yourself authentically. You know, the example that's coming up in my mind is a closeted gay person who finds an outlet with someone who can, and you can explore that experience and start to feel safe. And I don't mean to say that it's healthy to fracture your life, because a lot of people end up doing that, where they cannot continue to exist in the repression, so they fracture and they have a secret life. If you have to have a secret life, utilize it in order to integrate more authentic expression into your life. Use it to practice who you really are. This could be an online community. This could be, different relationships, different friendships, different sexual relationships, whatever. But use those maybe a fractured reality. If you have to go this path, it's too scary to bring it into your real life. Find those outlets and start using it as practice in order to feel into, who am I really? What do I really want? How do I authentically want to show up in relationships? How do I authentically want people to receive me? And as you do that, you can start practicing what it feels like to actually be authentic, and you can start exploring that shadow and recognizing that it's not so scary, that you can be received by community or by other people without getting rejected, and use that to integrate and to pull it into your life. If you're someone who has these fake relationships, fake is maybe a strong word, but surface level relationships, and you start to integrate your authenticity after repressing it, you are going to have upheaval. You are going to have upheaval in your relationships because you weren't being authentic, because it's not your true reality. You were creating a pretend reality. And so as you bring the truth into your reality, you are going to have upheaval for all those things which are not actually true, those things which are not actually resonant for your spirit. And that can be very scary, that can be very difficult. But remember, if you find yourself thinking, I can't leave this person, understand that you absolutely can. And it is so much more worth it to be true to your heart and be your authentic self and recognize that you can be loved for who you really are than it is to repress it, because it's just illness to repress it. It's just a path of, you're going to get reborn. I mean, even if you can endure the lifetime of discomfort that you're putting yourself into, you're going to get reborn into the same exact situation 10 times worse until you learn how to resolve it. Find your community, explore your triggers, and learn to love yourself in those spaces. Now, if you're someone who prefers to be alone, it's similar to the previous one, because you want to focus on shining your true self to attract your soul family. Being alone is a defense mechanism in many cases in order to protect yourself from experiencing your shadow, from experiencing your deeper emotions. It's a defense mechanism from getting rejected and from feeling these negative feelings. But understand that as you learn how to truly understand who you really are and to shine who you really are, you're going to attract your soul family. And your soul family is not going to reject you for who you really are, because they're going to understand you and they're going to love you for who you are. You deserve to be loved for who you are. You deserve to be seen for who you really are. So as you learn to love yourself and accept your true self, and as you learn to say, I deserve love, I am a beautiful, unique individual, and the only reason why I think I'm not is because my parents told me I wasn't, or they indicated that I wasn't when I was a kid. But I know that I'm a beautiful person, and I know that I have worth and value. And as you learn that, you can start to feel comfortable opening up your energy to people who also see that and who also feel that. Being alone is a little confusing because it's a balance. If you are too alone, that can be an indication of imbalance. Or if you are afraid to be alone, you're never alone, that can be indicative of an imbalance. If you're someone who is afraid to be alone, or you have anxious preoccupied attachment, or you're obsessed with relationships or whatever, if you're afraid to be alone, you have to understand that being alone is really important for you. And you actually need to integrate being alone a little bit more. And this is not just being physically alone. For me, I was afraid to be alone, but I didn't find it hard because I would escape into fantasy reality. And I had fantasy relationships inside my head. And so I was constantly getting an emotional hit, a dopamine hit. I was constantly attempting to regulate my energy through the use of relationships, and I never knew how to regulate my energy myself. I always needed it to be someone else, whether it was in my imagination or not. If you are someone who cannot be alone, you cannot sit still with yourself, you cannot sit still with your own thoughts, your own energy, you have to practice being alone. You have to take a couple of months at least to sitting in your own energy and learning about when you get dysregulated and learning about how to regulate without other people's help. It's brutal. And again, community is really important. And I don't think you should be utterly and completely alone forever. That's not what I'm saying. But you have to learn how to sit with your own energy, learn how to detangle it from other people's energy, learn how to stop being a victim of other people's energy, and learn how to really integrate your own emotional regulation as you get dysregulated, finding those activities that help you regulate. And again, that's only if you can't find yourself to be alone. If you're too alone, you need to learn how to sit in the energy of other people and open your vulnerability up to people. Having good boundaries is really good, but there are going to be people in your life who are curious about you, who are interested in you as you open yourself up to them. Allow yourself to open yourself up to them without too many expectations. You can do it slow, you can do it steady. And as you learn how to shine your authentic truth, find those communities where you resonate, you're going to find that people are very curious about you. And it might be harder to find people who you are curious about, but just keep shining your authentic truth and trust that your soul family is coming in as you continue to be more vulnerable and to be more authentic. If you are addicted to fantasy relationships like I was, you have to be careful because there are no challenges. This is kind of the same as not being in a deep relationship, because if it's in your mind, if you're not going too deep, you're not going to be triggered because it's your own brain. You're going to avoid your triggers like no one else can. So if you're addicted to fantasy relationships, understand that that can be dangerous because you're not actually getting triggered. It's not a place of healing per se, but fantasy relationships can be a safe space for manifesting a partner or manifesting a friend group or manifesting these relationships that you actually do deserve. So if you are addicted to fantasy relationships, try to refocus your addiction to thoughts and to relationships that are sustainable, that are fulfilling, that are practical. And get to the root of the emotional need that you're trying to solve with these fantasy relationships, and understand that you can actually create those relationships in your real life, and you don't need to escape into fantasy and to have them. So I think that the last thing I want to talk about is if you focus too much on your friendships or you focus too much on romance, understand that that is also an imbalance. The way that I have really started to heal this in myself, I focused personally too much on romance, is to open up my mind and stop classifying relationships. This is a very radical thing to do, but I stopped classifying relationships under labels. And I've been working on this for many years. This I've learned is called relationship anarchy. So if you're curious, you can research relationship anarchy. But the idea is that you don't have hierarchy. You don't have separation of, platonic or romantic relationships. Obviously, unless you're talking specifically about are you having sex with someone or not. But you pull back and you remove the importance of sex in a relationship. You pull back, you remove the importance of these obligations that you put onto other people, these labels, these definitions, and what they mean. And you really start to see people for who they are, showing up authentically in your life as. And being polyamorous really helps with this, because for me at least, it has opened up my mind to being able to remove these labels. As you remove the labels, you recognize that you wake up every day and you see the people in your life for who they are, truly who they are to you. I have friends who you might call platonic soulmates. I have friends who are, there's absolutely no word to describe what we are. It's very confusing if you try to get into the labeling side of things. So I've gotten these really fulfilling relationships that evade definition because I refuse to put a focus on the definition. What are we? Are we dating? Are we this? Are we that? Okay, are they calling you? Are they showing up in your life? Don't put so much pressure on the label, because someone could call you their husband or their wife, and they could not actually be showing you their true self. You could actually not have a very good actual relationship. So the idea that I use is just to really pull back my energy and really focus on the actual energy of the relationship. What is our actual connection to one another today? And understanding that that is changing and evolving every single day. How can we support each other? How can we be there for each other as our relationship changes? As we either choose to have sex or not have sex, as we choose to prioritize time with each other or time with other people. How can we maintain that strong relationship? Having that steady understanding of relationship and friendship first and foremost is going to make everything else so much less dramatic. I mean, the whole idea of breakups and everything, building a community of support that is not dependent on romantic love is an anti-capitalist endeavor, and it creates community. So what I mean by that is that we have been brainwashed into these nuclear family systems, into pairing off heteronormatively, and we've been trapped with usually just a spouse and then however many children we have, and that's not enough support for two people. That's a breeding ground for trauma to continue in the home and also continue down the genetic line. And I do believe it was intentionally designed to do that. So as you learn to decentralize relationships, romantic relationships in your life, and as you learn to create a more fulfilling community reality between yourself and your community, and really untangle these labels and allow your friends to support you in a loving way, and allow your partners to be supported by other people as well, we are going to be integrating a much higher vibrational reality, not just for ourselves, but for our communities and for our children. So that's another really important thing. I hope that this helps. I know I do a lot of stuff on relationships, but I do believe they are such a wonderful space to explore ourselves and to explore our healing and to explore all of the different shadows that we have inside of ourselves. We put a lot of emphasis on them in our current society, and so it's a good space to focus on in order to learn that harmony that comes from within ourselves. And as we integrate that harmony, then we are able to actually create a harmonious world. And as we create a harmonious world, all of our relationships become harmonious, and our children have a harmonious reality, and our friends have a harmonious reality, and then we enter Unitopia, which is heaven on earth. It's here as soon as you're able to harmonize your internal state. Thank you again for your attention. Please join UNICULT. Uni bless.